but you chase moments like that that
sure.
make you feel alive. Because like, guess what? An insurance salesman may make more money than me.
They don't have that
He
feeling.
don't feel alive on Friday night
Nope.
at 6:30 like I do.
Nope.
And so that's why I tell these guys,
Right.
like, I do this because I'm trying to be you.
Right.
I'm trying
Right.
to live vicariously
Yep.
through you for a couple hours every Friday night.
You heard that there. That is Mishawaka High School's head football coach, Keith Kinder, talking about how electric game nights are at Steele Stadium. More of that later, but first, welcome to Round the Bend Now and Then, a podcast that shines a light on the South Bend and Mishawaka areas past and present. Through interviews with local business owners, leaders, and community members, our listeners and I learn together about all of the great people and great things going on in our community, as we also learn about South Bend and Mishawaka's history and how intertwined our past is with our present. Last week, you heard all about Mishawaka High School Steele Stadium and how it is so much more than just grass, bleachers, and field goal posts. Mishawaka historian Pete DeKeever joined me, and we learned that it was built at a time when many families were uncertain where their next meal was coming from, during the Great Depression. Mishawaka School and city leaders had the vision to propose building the finest stadium in the state, and some say in the Midwest. But it wasn't your run-of-the-mill construction project. It was constructed as a part of the Works Progress Administration, or WPA for short, which was a program created by the Franklin Roosevelt administration to get unemployed citizens back to work, all while injecting sorely needed money back into the local economy. But if you asked the actual workers who helped construct the stadium, it was so much more than just a construction project. Many were Mishawaka graduates and residents themselves, so they knew they were providing their city with something bright to rally around when everything else seemed so dark. What they might not have known is that they were building the foundation of a tradition, the tradition of a high school football stadium that 80-plus years later still stands tall just a stone's throw from Mishawaka High School. When I was working on last week's episode, I thought that it would be really cool to actually head to Steele Stadium and record there. And who better to talk to about the relationship between a city's love of a football team and its tradition-filled historic stadium than the head coach of the Mishawaka Cavemen football team himself, Mr. Keith Kinder. So in this episode, I meet with Coach Kinder in his office, deep in the bowels of historic Steele Stadium. We talk about balancing all of the traditions and everything else that comes with leading a 100-year-old plus football program. As you'll hear, more than anything, however, above all other history and above all other traditions, Coach Kinder cares deeply about his players and wants them to be a success on and off the field. Next, I asked Keith to tell us a little bit about himself. And as you'll hear, his upbringing attending school as a kid was similar to the community he serves now, even down to the dang maroon colors.
We'll start with a little brief introduction. Tell me where you're from, high school, all that stuff.
Yeah, so I grew up in this area. Went to Moran Elementary through 5th grade. My parents are both Jimtown graduates. And at the end of my 5th grade year at Moran, they informed us that we were moving across the street from my dad's parents. So we were moving into the Jimtown district.
Okay.
I was absolutely crushed to be leaving my friends, but ended up being a great experience. So I'm a Jimtown grad, graduated in 1999, had the opportunity to play 3 sports, which had I gone to Penn, likely would not have been an option. So had a really great high school experience. It was really neat. I had a lot of the same teachers that my parents did. So, those that loved my mother were excited to see me as a student, and those that had my father as a student had some preconceived notions of who I was going to be. But And that's what's so neat about working at
Right.
this place. You know, Mishawaka's, in my mind, is just a bigger version of
Big family.
of Jimtown.
Yeah.
You know, it's a really small, tight-knit community. You know, we have 1,400 students, and they all live in about probably a 2-mile radius of each other. It's just kind of compacted. So it's just it's like how I grew up here.
Yeah.
So it's pretty neat.
Everybody knows you and everything. And you're wearing the same colors, right? 'Cause
Correct.
Jimtown's
Maroon. Yep,
so you
used
didn't
the
need to
maroon.
change your wardrobe over the years.
Next, I asked Keith about his path to becoming the head coach at Mishawaka. And as you'll hear, like most of our paths, the trajectory is never a straight one. There are many zigs, zags, ups, and downs. And he learned something early on, and something that I wholeheartedly agree with, and I live and breathe it every day. It's all about relationships.
Talk to me about your path to becoming the head coach of the Mishawaka Cavemen.
Man, it was so weird. I went to college at Trine. It was Tri-State at the time.
Yes, in
to
Angola.
To play football.
Okay.
I was an education major. I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. I hated
In college, you wanted to be a teacher coach. You knew.
I did. But it's not that simple.
Hell no, it's not.
I hated college football. I just didn't like it. It was not a fun experience. I had been so used to like being around great coaches that love building relationships, and you go to college and you're just a number.
Yeah.
And you walk by the head coach on campus or the offensive coordinator on campus, and they don't even know you. They don't even talk to you or know you. So it just wasn't a great experience. And so I moved to Indianapolis with who is now our defensive coordinator.
Really? Okay.
Matt Lewinsky was a high school buddy. And I got into journalism. I just completely changed my major, got into journalism. So I graduated college, got a job at the Elkhart Truth, working in the sports department. Made about $11 an hour, I think.
Wow.
But did have insurance at least. But then just couldn't make any money,
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
And so then I moved to like a part-time sports writer, full-time in the RV industry. I was terrible at that job. I wasn't passionate about it, I'll admit. I showed up late probably 3 or 4 times a week. You know, just absolutely hated it. Felt like I had no purpose. And a buddy of mine, probably 2 years into that, got the head baseball job at South Bend Adams.
Okay.
We were dating friends, you know, like the girl he was dating, the girl I was dating were like best friends. And we got to talking at a bar one night. He's like, you know, he found out that I was passionate about A, the Counting Crows, which were his favorite band, and B, baseball. And then he was like, well, why don't you help me coach baseball?
Yeah.
And I did that first year, and I fell in love with coaching, and I knew that
Coaching that age level too, right?
correct. Yeah. It was just like the building, the connection. And we were absolutely terrible. I think in our first year, we won 3 or 4 games.
Hey.
But by the end of, I think our 3rd season together, we had won the sectional at what was the Cove at the time. And it was a really cool experience. My brother ended up coaching with us, so I got to share that experience with him. And I kind of knew that, you know, I wanted to then chase that. And so I went to Bethel, got transitioned to teaching program, got in that, got a job while I was doing transition to teaching at John Young doing study hall.
Have some foot in the door.
Try to get a teaching job.
Yeah.
There you have it. That was easy. He's in the Mishawaka school system, and the rest is history. Yeah, right. He obviously had the itch to continue coaching, but next, you'll find out exactly what steps he took to continue his growth. And it's yet another one of those everything happens for a reason type journeys.
It was right around the times of the rifts in this area.
Yep.
So Mishawaka didn't have anything for me. So I went and I loved the offense that we were coaching in, you know, the option offense.
Yeah.
So I did some homework. I got on the DOE bank, the job bank.
Yeah.
I cross-referenced the openings with good football programs that ran a similar offense.
Just so you can grow and learn.
Correct. And I ended up at Southern Wells in the middle of nowhere. I mean, nowhere.
Where the hell? Where in the world is Southern
So
Wells?
it is about 40 miles straight south of Fort Wayne near Bluffton.
Lord. Dude, yeah, that's the middle
Near
of nowhere.
Bluffton. I mean, it was literally the middle of nowhere. I coached 3 sports from the jump. I was a football assistant,
Yeah.
JV basketball, and they made me the head baseball coach, mainly because they had nobody
Of course.
else
You
that
got to do
wanted
what you got to
it.
do,
So,
yeah.
like, I just immersed myself in the community and had an absolute blast, and I loved it. The thing that I hated was
Isolation.
I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
There was no one around.
Yep.
Like on Sundays, I would drive to Fort Wayne just to
for
see
people.
human beings. Yeah. and so after right before the start of my second year at Southern Wells, Mishawaka calls and offers me a job. And we're like
a teaching job.
a teaching job and a coaching job.
Right.
And we're like a week and a half into 2-a-days. And I turned it down. Like I felt like I couldn't leave
Wow. Yeah.
this community in that amount of time.
At that time.
Yeah. The second year was really hard on me at Southern Wells. Like
Yeah.
I had just started feeling like really lonely,
Yeah,
to be
of
honest
course.
with you. And it
You're
was,
used to people up here. You're used to
correct.
family,
And
friends.
all my family. And as much as your family wants to support you, my dad made it to every Friday night
Of
football
course.
game, but other than that,
Then he went home afterwards.
yeah,
right,
it was really lonely. The same scenario repeated itself at the end of going into my third year at Southern Wells. A week into 2-a-days, Mishawaka calls. It's the director of HR. His name's Greg Hicksonball.
Oh, yeah.
A fantastic guy. He calls me and he says, I got another job.
Right.
And if you tell me no this time, I'm never calling again. Like,
It's an offer you can't refuse.
you are taking
Yeah.
it. And I remember taking the call, hanging up, calling the head football coach, and his name's Mark Lefevre. He won a state championship. He should be in the Hall of Fame. And saying, I got to do it.
Right.
And I went to the principal, and I went to his house. He and I had become really close, and I'm bawling my eyes out. But
of
I'm
course.
like, if
course.
this place could be transplanted up here, I'd never leave.
Right.
Like I absolutely loved it. I told him, like, I ain't gonna I'm never gonna meet my wife here.
Yeah.
Like I had gotten a late start, so
Yep.
I'm pushing 30 at this point. I'm a single guy, living by myself, and so I knew that it was, as hard as it was the right move for me. So I got up here, and instantly immersed myself in the football program.
Yep.
I was a volunteer coach. I was an assistant track coach for a number of years, and just kind of worked my way up to where eventually I became the offensive coordinator here.
Yep.
And then kind of out of the blue, Coach Curtis decided that he was going to move on to Warsaw. And, to make a really long story short, I put my name in that in the ring, and, they ended up picking me.
Next, I asked Keith what he was most nervous about as he began leading the Mishawaka football program. And as you'll hear, the rich tradition is something that he wanted to continue and even improve upon.
What were you most afraid of or scared of or nervous of?
Moving back here?
No, taking over the Mishawaka head coaching football job.
Just that I was going to ruin it, like.
So you're thinking like doomsday time.
Well, I was thinking like, I think everybody, if you're in this job, it's similar to you. Like everybody wants to be the guy.
Absolutely.
And then when they tell you you're the guy, you're like, oh, now what? Like I got the thing that I think I wanted.
Right.
But did I really want it?
Yeah.
What if it doesn't go the way that I expect it to go or others do?
Right.
It's on me now.
Yep.
Right. Like, and it's such a different feeling, because I remember even as the offensive coordinator, as passionate about it as I was, I could go home at night and it was over with. Right. I can't now.
Right.
I don't think I was prepared for how it was going to consume me.
I see.
You know,
yes.
But I think my biggest fear was we had been successful, and my biggest fear was I wanted to carry on the tradition of this place, and I wanted to try to make it better. And so it was really hard. I remember like our first Sunday meeting before the very first game. For me as the head coach, we're in the Sunday meeting, we're doing the game plan, and we're like all looking at this whiteboard, and we're like, okay, here's what we think we could do. What are we gonna do? And then like I was like, okay, what are we gonna do? And everyone's looking at me like, well, it's your call now.
Yeah.
And that was like the first time I was like, oh,
yes,
yeah, okay. And then it's just kind of we've hit the ground running. So.
It's a whole different ball of wax when the buck stops at your seat. Truly.
It really is. And
truly.
There's a lot of fun parts about that, and there's a lot of not fun parts about that.
I have a little theory. And next, I asked Keith about something that I think is passed down from one Mishawaka head football coach to another in some backroom ceremony in some secret room in the depths of Steele Stadium.
When you took over the Mishawaka job, there's tons of tradition in Mishawaka football. Is there some book of secrets that they give you how to carry on the Mishawaka tradition?
No, I think it's just no book of secrets. I think it's just being around a lot. And I think the book of secrets is this place, right? Like you try to respect this place. We try to build some new traditions of our own and expand on them. But I think the biggest thing is, I tell our kids all the time, the number of people that have been in that same seat as you and thinking about that as you go out to practice, as you go out to play, like we're not just here for ourselves. And Mishawaka football is going to be here long after all of us are. So really, it's just a matter of for a small period of time, we're the ones that get to
carry that torch.
Yeah, and so it's a really neat opportunity that we have. There's not a lot of places like this place.
No, and that's kind of why I joke with the Book of Secrets. It's like, it's almost like we'll let you coach, but you have to continue, and it's almost inherently it's a given that. When you take over this program, you are going to carry on a tradition, but also implement new traditions for you guys too.
Right. Next, I asked Keith to describe some of the positives about having such a dedicated community supporting the program. And everything speaks, and it speaks loudly that he thinks of his kids first and foremost.
I've been to a couple Mishawaka football games. Last season, I went to like probably 3 or 4 of them. Came out and supported. It gets wild.
Yeah.
Some of these fans are extremely dedicated, and you could tell that they've been coming to games for weekend or Friday after Friday after Friday for years, even without kids here.
Yeah.
What are some positives about having that much support?
Well, I think the neatest part is just for our kids. It's just so cool that our kids have the support here because when we were growing up, that was every Friday night everywhere, right? Like,
it was
places were full. Yeah. High school football was the thing to do. There's so many more options of things to do now.
Right.
I mean, you could sit at home and now watch the game.
Correct.
Live.
On your phone.
So like, I think this place is special because our attendance has stayed pretty steady. Like people still come to games. It's still the thing to do on a Friday night. And so I think it's fantastic. Now, I don't have to sit in the stands and listen to all the people say how big of an idiot I am.
Yeah.
And we are, like my wife has to go through sometimes. But I think that, as with anything, like passionate people are what makes this exciting. There's always going to be people that think you're doing things the wrong way, but our kids understand, at least I hope they understand how important Mishawaka football is to the people in our community.
Yes. Just sit in the stands for a bit and they'll tell you.
With all of the passion that we just talked about, there also comes some unreasonable expectations. And, like most of us, we tend to forget that these are just kids out there.
I'm learning that slowly but surely that
Yeah.
you're not gonna please
No.
everyone.
No.
You know, you can only try to do what you think is right. And I think that sometimes the fans, as passionate as they are, forget that number one, we're working with 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. And number two, you're working with teachers
Correct.
and coaches who have families,
Correct.
who are working 70 hours a week
Absolutely.
for these people,
Exactly.
and being paid very poorly. So like it's like
It's not the NFL.
correct. It's
You're not
college
living in
football.
mansions. It's
Like,
not
you're
college.
correct.
No, there's no NILs.
Right. And so, you know, I always find interest in, you know, the people on social media that says, you know, Mishawaka should have passed the ball more. Or this, and it's like, okay, well, let me tell you, if you can draw up a 4-3 defense against this formation, then you can start telling me what you think I would do. Like, it's not even doing a good job in terms of winning and losing. I want our community to understand that, like, the ultimate goal here is to create good husbands, good fathers, good people, and teach them valuable life lessons about, hey, when things go bad, I've got an experience that I went through that I can overcome anything. So, and then it translates into winning games.
Right. Of course.
For the next several minutes, we talk about Steele Stadium itself. I asked Keith about his favorite thing about the stadium, and you can really tell that he truly appreciates all of the history and tradition that it holds, even with all of its idiosyncrasies.
Man, let's talk about this stadium a little bit. We've already hit it up a little bit. We've talked about it. The field here is pushing 100 years old. The stadium, the stands here, a little over 80. Man, what are your favorite things about the stadium here?
Oh man, I still think it's really special, but pre-big video board,
Yes.
the backdrop of the school, right into the end zone. Back in the old days, before the video board, our scoreboard sat on top of the school.
I got you.
And it was just a beautiful,
Scene,
unimpeded,
backdrop,
old, you know, I mean, this school is beautiful from the outside.
Gorgeous.
It sits in the middle of a neighborhood. Like, I love the fact that we have houses surrounding us. We are in a neighborhood.
A house can literally throw a stone and hit the
we
field.
We are a
Neighborhood stadium
program. We have people that will be on their walks with their dogs and stop and watch us practice.
That is so awesome.
It really is. Like, but then just the fact that, like you said, you walk in here, and you it is not new. It is not shiny. It has not been $1 million invested. This is exactly how it was originally intended. And I think there's something really neat about that. I think it's really neat that we are starting to add some modern things, you know, sort of like
Wrigley Field or Fenway.
Wrigley. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, you take the bones and you make it appealing. Like, hopefully we end up with turf at some point. But like, it's so neat to get to come to work here every day. I hope eventually they build us a new office, you know, so that we can get out of the mothball and dust infested area. I hope someday we get a locker room that has a little bit better air ventilation.
Right.
But I still want to keep
it builds character,
this.
man.
Yeah. So yeah.
So cool.
Knowing that most kids these days aren't the biggest of local history nerds, he still tries to instill a sense of history in his team by reminding them to be in the moment and have an appreciation for playing a game that many wish they still could be playing.
You already hit up on some of the instilling a sense of that history in your players. On a I don't know, day-to-day, week-to-week basis, that's something that you try to do, is just continue to instill a sense of history in your players with the stadium and everything, and
you know,
it's just almost a given.
Yeah, what I've found is that kids don't really care about that stuff anymore. You know,
that's what I was going to get
I've
to.
had a lot of people ask me, you know, do you ever talk about your successes that you had as a player in high school? And I always say they don't care. Like that's not important to them. What I do remind them of before kickoff every Friday night when we're in that building is that they are in special company.
Absolutely.
That there are people literally sitting directly above them.
Quite literally. And you could see the cement stands right above us.
That used to be down here in this room and no longer, I'm getting chills talking about it. Those people no longer get to be down here. And those people would give anything they could to get back down here. They would. And just a little further down are some young kids right above us that can't wait for the moment.
That's true.
To get down here. And so what's really wild is I can remember the first time that I wanted to be a high school football player. I was in 5th grade, and I remember it. And I remember it seeming like it was going to take forever to get here, right? Like it was just going to take forever, and it dragged on. And then you get here, and in the blink of an eye, it's done.
Yeah.
Right? And you only get 4 years of it. It's like some of the best memories I have are in that 4-year window.
Oh, yeah.
And they're gone, and you spend the rest of your life chasing it. I always tell our kids, that's why I do this job. Like, it's obviously not about the money. It's about chasing the moments that get your blood going. Like, and you have kids. Like, I tell our kids all the time, like, there's nothing that will ever replace the first time you see your baby when it's born, right?
Right.
But you chase moments like that make you feel alive. Because, like, guess what? An insurance salesman may make more money than me.
They don't have that
He don't feel alive on Friday night at 6:30 like I do.
Nope.
And so that's why I tell these guys, like, I do this because I'm trying to be you, right? I'm trying to live vicariously through you for a couple hours every Friday night.
Even though the kids may not be doctoral students in Mishawaka football history, they still do have a sense of the tradition behind the program, as it is written all over the locker room walls.
I guarantee you, if you asked any of your players, they understand the history. I mean, like, they couldn't tell you, this was built in 1937, but they still understand the tradition.
They do, and that's why when I showed you where we paint the year underneath what we win the morning after. Yeah, and I think that the fact that that's there, like,
correct.
If you're in this locker room every day for 4 months, you're gonna see
that.
You're gonna see the numbers. You're gonna see, oh my goodness, we were undefeated in 1947 or whatever it was. Like,
or even more recently, my brother was on that team.
Correct.
My uncle was on this team, and
I want to be up there.
Yeah, you're darn right.
I want my number up there. I want to be able to bring my kids in here someday,
right,
and show them that. Right. And so I think that's the way you kind of
integrate it and kind of exactly.
Next, you'll find out that opposing players have to get a bit creative when preparing for football games at Steele Stadium.
What are some of the biggest complaints that you hear from opposing fans or players about playing here?
The visitor locker room.
Is that the complaints you get hands down?
Yeah, it's without question. It's tiny.
Okay.
It's actually where our freshmen. It's our freshman locker room. So, like, every Thursday during the season, our freshmen
have to get all their junk out
their locker room to put it into equipment room so that the visitors can come in.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, you can probably fit 30 people in there comfortably.
Oh my God,
we got people bringing like 60, 70 people.
Yeah,
so people have to
take turns.
People have to get dressed out on the practice field. That's the biggest complaint.
Competitive advantage. Yeah, that's what we call it.
And the second biggest complaint is, mid to late season, the field. Yeah, the field gets torn up. It's a natural surface.
Right.
Our practice field isn't a full width.
Yeah.
So we have to practice a lot on the game field, which means that the game field gets torn up.
Right.
And so
you got the band out there too. It's used.
Without question. Those are the two complaints.
The field and the opposing locker room.
Yep.
Competitive advantages. That's what we call them.
Yep.
I wish that this was a video podcast as well, because if you could have seen the look on Coach Kinder's face when I told him that I surveyed his players to ask him questions. I really didn't, but I thought it was funny. You'll hear about that next.
I was able to survey some of your players for some potential questions to ask you.
Really?
Coach, when you were a football player in high school and your football coach was getting on your nerves, what strategies did you use to not react and say something you'd regret later?
This is a real question from a player? Oh. I remember one time, I think it was my senior year. We had just come off winning the state championship. It's early in the first week of my senior year, and I thought I was something special. And
Ooh.
he was getting on my nerves, and I can't remember exactly what I said, but I believe I told him to shut up in some way, shape, or form.
In some fashion.
And he made me feel about this big. And I remember afterwards he, like a parent said, "Hey, listen, I'm really disappointed."
Yeah.
In the way that, like, you're supposed to be a leader.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of thing. But I hope that we don't annoy our kids. I know that they get irritated.
Of
we
course.
have high standards.
You're not doing
right?
your job
We have
if they're
high
not getting
expectations
irritated.
for 'em.
Yes.
We try to tell them, like, hey, it may not sound like it, and
Correct.
it may not seem like it, but this is love.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, we love you,
Yep.
and we expect the most of you. So I know that
Right.
that we annoy them.
But
right?
it goes back to what you said at the beginning with you playing football at Tri-State. You didn't feel the relationship. You didn't feel the love.
Right.
If you felt the relationships and if you felt the love when those coaches did get on you,
Right.
it wouldn't be as big of a deal because you
Right.
know it's all from the heart. Just like if you guys were to get on your kids here, it's all from the heart. They feel the love, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's because you built that foundation of the relationship.
Right.
Man, this isn't the 1930s when the stadium was built.
No, it's
when
not.
you march these boys out there and it's like boot camp. It's all about relationships,
Right.
man.
Next, I read another question from one of Keith's players. You'll hear how proud Keith was early on in his tenure to have his family immersed in the Mishawaka High School community. His own little 3-year-old son was proud as well. So proud that he made sure to leave his mark.
Coach, what were your thoughts when you looked over during a live scrimmage and saw your little son peeing all over the Mishawaka M?
That's it. What's really funny about that is I was on the field with our JV, and I saw my kid over there with several other kids, and they were running around the M.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this is exactly what
It's cool.
I want. I want our kids to grow up. Like, there's got to be some perks to your dad being the head football coach at
Darn
Mishawaka.
right.
There's got to be some perks to your dad being a football coach at Mishawaka.
Right.
And so it gave me great joy to see
him running around in
group
that
of
M.
kids. 2 plays later, I look up, and it's not even that he's peeing. It's that his pants are down to his ankles, like a 3-year-old pees. And fortunately, it was the scrimmage. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even had my phone on me. I get my cell phone out, and I call my wife, and she's like, what? Yeah? And I said,
funny.
Your son is pissing on the block M right now. And she said, oh my God. And at the same time, our offensive coordinator's wife, Jenny Shaw, saw it and starts walking towards Cameron to but I've got a picture of it. And someday I'm going to.
Great.
I hope he's a player here.
Yes,
and I can show
at his
him
graduation,
that
at his commencement, or something.
I don't know that. Well, you know how it's popular now to reenact younger pictures. I don't think that'll be one.
Yeah,
that we
you probably
reenact,
might
but-
get in trouble.
Yeah.
Next, we talk about some of the coaching techniques that he has learned from his own father, who, as Keith says, his 1980s coaching style led him to be a bit hard on him as a kid, but now he is his biggest fan.
Hey, I heard your dad used to coach baseball. Is that right, or coach you?
Mhm.
What did you take any coaching styles from him, or did you take any anti-coaching styles from him?
Yeah, he was really, really hard on me.
Okay.
And I think that he'll admit that to you. You know, I just think that things have changed so much that there's certain styles that I can't, you know, reenact. But you try to take the message and figure out a way to do it now. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. You hated the fact that we ran pursuit drill where you're sprinting for 20 straight minutes. But guess what? I can show you on film you made that play.
You're dang right.
Because of what you did on the practice field. So you
right.
try to take the lesson without the action necessarily.
Absolutely.
I also have a great picture somewhere of, I mean, it's T-ball. I know it's T-ball because in the background there is a T, and he is down in a catcher's position standing at me, and he is poking me in the chest because I have upset him with something. I have that picture as well. Like he was hard on me.
But you know what though? Who is your biggest fan right now, do you think?
My dad.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you got any little traditions each Friday night? Does he come down a little early and
he gets here early, and he saves. He's the seat saver, and we have a team meeting where I talk to our team in a classroom before they go to their position meetings, and then come out in the locker room to get dressed. And after my portion of the team meeting, I come up there and I sit with my dad for about 10 to 15 minutes. And
how special is that?
It's really special.
You know that there's a lot of folks out there who we're in our 40s, man. They don't have their parents around.
Right.
And for him to be able to see you down there and to he probably thinks back in his head all the times he was poking you out there on the field, but how cool is that?
It's really neat.
How cool is that?
You know, it's cool to be able to share in this experience with him. You know, he always says that he's 45-0 and I'm 0-15. You know, he takes the credit for our wins, but
I'm sure.
Yeah.
We wrap it up next when I ask Keith a reflective question about his players 20 or 30 years from now.
20, 30, 40 years from now, when you're back here on the field for a reunion game or something like that, and you know you're coming up giving your players that hug and everything, what's something that you want them to tell you that they learned from you 30 or 40 years ago?
You know, I think about that a lot. I hope that they tell me that they built some lasting relationships as a part of this program. I hope they've got guys that they're still friends with. You know, I hope that they're good husbands and good fathers. And I hope that they understand at that point the time commitment and the effort and energy that not just I put into this, but that collectively the group put into this to make this a special experience for them. And it's not something that you can know right now.
No.
But number one, I hope I'm here 30 years from now. You know, that'd be great. That'd put me at 73. I'll feel pretty good about myself. But yeah, that's one of the best parts about doing this is particularly in this week and next week. Right. The kids that over the course of the past 5 or 6 years are no longer a part of the program. Yeah. These are the 2 weeks that they come by the most. Yeah. So they'll pop by. And I always tell our players, like, you may not like us now. Right. But you're going to come back in 4 or 5 years. And the first person you're going to give a hug is the guy that you hated the most at the time. That's true, because they're going to be the ones that had high expectations of you. See, the problem right now is that not just at our place, there aren't enough people holding kids to high expectations, and so they're not used to it. Correct. They hate it. Yep. And then when they realize what it did for them, then they're like, okay, yeah.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Round the Bend Now and Then. A special thank you to Coach Keith Kinder for sharing your experiences coaching in historic Steele Stadium. Continued good luck with the program, and may you beat just about every team you play, except, of course, John Adams High School. Keep touching lives, man. Keep helping them build a foundation for a lifetime of success. Folks, do me a favor. Leave a review on whatever podcast app that you're listening to us on. Also, follow us on all of the socials. Twitter, Round the Bend Pod. Facebook, Round the Bend Now and Then. If you need to reach out, be sure to email roundthebend574@gmail.com. And as always, please share the podcast with those that you feel would enjoy it. Join us again next time as we learn more about South Bend and Mishawaka's Now and Then.